G'day and welcome. We are talking footy. We have got actual games to review this second half of the practice match or match simulation. We've got some players to talk about and lots of changes to our fantasy sides. Let's go!
Hodge has done it from nowhere. Busted the goal from inside the 10. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy. And I'm joined by the other half of the Ball Boys, Luke Rogerson, mate. How are you?
Got to have two ball boys.
Oh, can't. What you did there?
Yep, no eunuchs around here. Two balls make a right. No,
sure. Yeah. All right, we'll keep going.
That's a different saying.
We've got a lot of footy to talk to about, mate.
Is a eunuch someone with one testicle?
I think it might be without, but anyway.
Oh.
But I don't know. I'm not too well versed, but mate, lots of footy to talk about. It is the first week of the practice games done and dusted, and mate, there's a lot of information to take in. Sometimes it can be a bit daunting, but we're going to be here trying to guide everyone through what happened over the weekend. What do we take away from it?
Yep.
What bits of information can we throw out? What bits of information are important? Because that is easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, they kind of tease us, don't they? We get a bit of grainy footage and no stats, and then this coming week we're going to get some stats and some better footage, and then eventually we'll get the ultimate taste tester, which is round zero.
What have you got on Unix on us there, Matt? I can see you Googling things.
Didn't spell it correctly the first time.
What's the findings?
Castrated.
Yeah, complete snip. So no, we're not that. We've got two ball boys in the studio here. So yes, we're going to go through the matches that went down over the weekend. Now this is a sort of a part two of sorts.
Should I go Google images?
No, please don't.
Okay.
So if you missed the earlier one, we did the what did we do? We did the Western Bulldogs, Essendon, Freo versus the Indigenous All Stars, West Coast, Richmond, and Geelong versus Hawthorn games in one of our previous episodes. So go and check that one out. Now we are doing from the three-way onwards.
Yes, actually I do. I remember we were super excited for the three-way at the end of the last podcast, weren't we?
Yes, and maybe like most three-ways, it was a bit of a letdown, but
you got some experience, do you?
No, zero experience. But first of all, before we dive into this, the people who are signed up to our Patreon, they have already got this information.
Patreon.
The Patreon. They've already got this information. So shout out to those guys. So if you want the hot off the press news, everything in detail, sign up to our Patreon at patreon.com/ballboys as well. So you guys can get the information hot off the press in detail, as well as a lot of other things that come your way. But you took the notes on this one here, Luke. What can we learn from Collingwood versus Gold Coast versus Brisbane?
Not much. It was a hard watch, wasn't it? Probably the format didn't, I think, contribute to good fantasy watching either as well. So, from memory, was it Brisbane and the Pies that started?
Yeah, Pies,
so
Brisbane first.
They played two sixths, and then I think the
two quarters essentially.
Yeah, the Suns came in and played.
Yeah, and then the Pies sat down, and then the Pies came back after another two quarters and versus the Gold Coast. So the Pies played two
completely different teams.
Yeah, and two totally separate teams.
Which is fair enough. You're not going to sit them for an hour and then come back. So it just meant that we probably looked at the first half of what the Pies did right at the start, similar with the Lions. And then we're kind of fortunate that there's not too much relevant stuff happening with the Suns that kind of made it a little bit easier with this three-way.
Yeah, so I think the main thing with this one is let's not get too, don't take the result. And I think same for a lot of these ones. These first practice matches are probably the ones where teams are experimenting more still than the ones we're going to see next week. So I think, all in all, a lot of these things we're going to take with a grain of salt. But this game in particular, we saw a lot of funky things happening. So the main one I want to talk about is for the Brisbane Lions, Levi Ashcroft. Now, he didn't play the first two periods. Now, you could read into that and go, oh, is he in there? Is he not? But he has had a bit of an interrupted preseason. So maybe they're just bringing him along. Maybe they wanted to play him against the Suns and not the Pies for whatever reason. I don't know. But from what I could tell, he looked pretty good.
Yeah, I think the way I read this one was that they wanted to give him a little bit of midfield time too, and perhaps in those first 2 quarters against the Pies, they wanted to have their more like their typical last year's midfield in there, kind of lock that away, and then still be able to give him a little bit of midfield time. So the way I read it was that he might dabble in the midfield this year, but you're talking about going into the most recent premiership team.
Yeah.
I think he's probably going to be filling spots outside of that midfield to do his apprenticeship.
I think when he was in the CBAs, like he was playing the high half forward, went straight into the stoppages and got around it. Took a couple of heavy knocks. One guy blew out his shoulder trying to put him on his ass, and he got back up. So tough kid. So I think all in all positive for what we did see of Levi Ashcroft. We'll keep an eye on again in this other game, and hopefully it's a bit more of a normal game.
Yeah.
And we see him play from the beginning, which would be great. So yeah, fingers crossed that's what we see. What about his brother? Did you see much from him?
I was impressed by Will Ashcroft. You're talking about a guy that's priced at 82 here, and watching the first 2 periods of this game, he was all about it, and he was what we're hoping for, which is looking like that 70+% CBA midfielder at Brisbane. So it sounds pretty crazy from a guy that's just won a normie, but I think he's ready to take that next step. The issue here is, of course, the early buy. And a slightly awkward price tag. I do think with a 70% CBA role, and obviously having now had a full preseason, I think this guy could be 100+ for sure. But it's just whether we can wait.
Yeah, to me, he did look like the 3rd mid behind Dunkley and Neal. Where he was sort of like the 4th, tied for 5th mid last year. I think McCluggage is still going to be in there, but I think he's going to leapfrog him when it comes to CBAs.
Yeah.
And I think we saw that in this one. He did look good. I think if you were on him, you're
still on him.
You saw what you wanted to see. I think if you weren't on him, then I'm not sure he convinced you to jump on. But I think, he was sort of ticking boxes there for what we wanted to. What about the Collingwood Magpies? The main player that I was interested in personally was the Perry man. I told you I was a mild Perry sauce.
Yeah, more of a lemon and herb guy.
No,
you do strike me as that.
I'd say I'm between mild and hot. I'm not extra hot just yet, but I'm between mild and hot at the moment. He did have the role. The asterisk is here that there was no Dugori in either team, and Pendlebury played in the second half. So in the first half, it was Dacos, Crisp, and Perryman, who were the clear main 3 guys in there, with a little bit of Ed Allen. So to me, I think he's at least a top 4 midfielder for Collingwood. If Pendlebury comes in and pushes him down to 4th, or if he is leapfrogging Crisp and Pendlebury and as maybe a top 2 guy in there, then that'd be very exciting. So what were your thoughts for Perryman there?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty neutral as well, and with a couple of other guys in a similar price range putting their hands up in later games that we'll talk about, I probably cooled on him a little bit. But like you say, that was kind of the games that tell us a little bit less, and this week we get to see some games that will hopefully tell us a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to keep your eyes on him.
I'm not sure we're going to get Degoe in the preseason games. I think he's probably going to be either lining up in round 0 or maybe even round 1. So
makes it hard to pull a trigger on a guy that you're not super confident and that has an early buy too. So he'd have to come out and do something pretty impressive. But like with all 3 of these teams, we're going to have an opening round score.
Yeah, opening round will tell us a lot.
Somebody that I just was watching and desperately wanted to pick, no matter the scenario, is Nick Dacos. This guy...
It turns out he's still pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know, man. You run out of words, don't you? And obviously the early buy is a big part of turning us away, but also the narrative of the lingering foot issue. Mate, he should have a lingering foot issue all the time. His foot issue is related to leather poisoning. If you get that many kicks, of course you're going to have a fucking foot issue.
His fitness looked fine. He was running well. So I don't think the plantar fascia issue is
for a guy that
an
doesn't
issue.
For a guy that doesn't have to be out there, like he has a sore foot in a match sim game, says, no, I won't play this one. He went out there and went, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have 40 touches in
he just killed
two
it.
quarters. It's ridiculous.
What about his brother?
Yeah.
Josh Dacos. Now, this is something I'd seen murmurs and whispers of in the track watchers were looking at it, but I think he started off half back, and I think the role is real. What can we expect from Josh Dacos, and is this a sneaky pick? Maybe more for draft, but I think I see upside here.
Yeah, I agree in that role. I think he can be anything. The stars aren't quite aligning in terms of picking him for Classic. You're picking him as a midfielder. You're paying 95 for him, which is significantly more than some other value guys.
He's like 10 points more expensive than a Nick Martin was last year.
Yeah.
So you're leaving yourself less room for error.
But what I will say is if he plays in that half-back line and he's allowed to do what he wants, there's every chance that you could be looking at him as a top sort of 10 defender at the end of the year.
This is my thoughts. Like, if you average 95 in a wing role, like, you could very comfortably put 10 to 15 points on that in a half-back role. And this could be, and could is the big word here.
Yeah.
This could be a top, dare I say, like 3 or 4 defender.
I mean, he knows how to find
the stars align.
And
Sorry, you go.
No, I was going to segue. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think the bigger flow-on effect when it comes to other things is the impact of what it has on Houston.
Oh, we're both going to segue.
Okay.
Well
both
done.
segueing. There you go. So I think
I got to remember I'm the co-host. I got to defect to you for the segues.
Well, I think Houston, we have a problem here because
that one hasn't been overused.
Yeah, no, I
just
thought of it. I just thought of it right now.
God, you're creative.
But it's interesting. Like they bring him over and then they move Josh Dacos to half back. I sort of thought that he was going to be the unquestioned quarterback sort of type there now, but if Josh Dacos, who seems to me like the thirstier gangster, like he's the guy that really calls for it, whereas I think Houston's a bit more like, if it comes my way, I'll take it. If not, he's maybe a bit more defensive as well. So I would pick Dacos to outscore Houston. So I think it's a little bit of stocks down on Dan Houston, especially for draft.
Yeah, we're not going to see him in round 0 either.
Yes.
Makes it very
correct.
hard. We'll skip across to the Suns now. There wasn't really anyone that we were looking at, and the one rookie that we were decided to try
Did his shoulder.
Yeah, he tried to cut Levi Ashcroft in half and ended up cutting himself in half. So
yeah.
Leo Lombard, unfortunately, there's a line through him, but hopefully he can get that shoulder right.
Yeah, hopefully it's not too long of an injury. I don't think we've got a timeline yet or what actually happened, but I think he was a long shot for our teams anyway. So this, like you said, basically puts a line through him. Before we go on to the next game here, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this episode, which is Keeper Fantasy. Make sure you guys, if you have a draft coming up, it is draft weekend very, very soon. So if you haven't organized or you still have time to move around, head over to keeperfantasy.com. And experience a brand new draft platform. I'm actually doing a slow draft on there now, Luke. And one of the new features that they've got in there is trading picks. And I've been, you better believe I'm making the most out of that.
Utilizing
I'm trading picks left, right, and center. And it's seamless. It's very, very easy to use. Lots of cool new features like the pick trading. You can customize your scoring. There's category leagues in there as well. So, definitely head over to keeperfantasy.com to check that one out, guys. Thank you for them for sponsoring this episode.
Beautiful.
Let's head on to the next one here, which is Sydney versus GWS. Look, I will say, better footage this time of year.
That's good.
There was no tree in the foreground.
That was a battle last year, wasn't it?
Yes.
Just pan to the forward line and just get this beautiful oak tree.
Yeah.
Camera.
It was a nice tree, some good, nice green leaves on it. But firstly, some concerns about a player who didn't play in this one. Callum Mills, it's come out that he's got mild plantar fasciitis, and you were telling me just before the podcast we started recording that might also be in doubt for the Community Series game as well.
If I was a betting man, I don't reckon he'll play based on the article that I read.
Feeling too,
I think that he was very bullish about being there for the Swans opening round game, but he was maybe alluding to the fact that he won't get up for this.
Because they've only got really a week between that game and the opening round game, so it's not a huge amount of time to bounce back, even if it is a minor thing.
I think
if he's there and he's playing midfield in round 0, is it enough for us to launch?
if, like you say, if the role looks good and the score's there, I think it is because of the player that he is.
This isn't just some dude we're
exactly. Not
projecting.
all missed preseason games are created equal. If you're a rookie, an up and comer, a role player that's missing preseason games, and it's a role that you haven't played before, that to me is
That's
like
a flag.
line through kind of stuff. But with Callum Mills, the beauty of the opening round is that we get to have a score on the board effectively, and we know this guy's played midfield for the Swans before and been very successul. So this is still a wait and see, and especially because I think that at the price he's at, he performs a really important function in our team. At the moment.
Especially with the defensive line, the way it is, and those sort of things. So, I agree. The other players that were missing this one, for the Giants, obviously, Tom Green with his, what was his injury again? Calf? Yeah, I want to say it was a calf. Stephen Canelio didn't play. I think he's sort of ramping up. Fingers crossed he's there. Next one, Drake Stringer and Sam Taylor weren't there. Also for Swans, Lloyd and Papley were some other notable players. I'm sure there were others, but those were some of the notable ones. If we start with the GWS Giants, they had a few rookies that we were looking at here. And look, we're probably going to go into the rookies a bit more in detail with our next podcast. We're going to sort of rank them. But the main takeaways were Leak didn't play until the fourth quarter. And in a game without Tom Green, Canelio, or Jake Stringer, to me, that's concerning. I thought they would have at least want to get a bit more of an eye on him. I think he's someone that maybe we're looking at. Basement price might be someone to look elsewhere. One of the big standouts of this one was Cody Angove, who I must admit wasn't on my radar, but he is after this performance. So he kicked 2 goals. Now, both were on the back of 50-metre penalties, mind you. But he was playing off the wing. Skinny fella, but this guy, he was ferocious. Like, he went in, tackled hard, found space. Like, real, gave me like Liam Baker kind of vibes,
wow,
just like a guy who really just got in there and did the dirty work.
I think if you're going to play in GWS's team, that's mandatory, isn't it, that you get in and you do that kind of stuff?
Sort of remind me a bit of like the Harvey Thomas from last year. He was sort of that smaller type. He looked a bit taller than him, but thin. But I do think he still got in there and tackled pretty hard. So I think he's a bit of a bolter and one to keep an eye out for from the Giants there. I think 271K off the top of my head. So a little bit above basement price, but still pretty cheap.
What about a Connor Stone?
Connor Stone, he was pretty rock solid.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Beautifully done.
He played in defence. I wouldn't say he was outstanding, but it's a good role, right? Like, we love our forwards playing anywhere but the forward line.
Correct.
So I think that, pretty solid. Like I said, solid as a rock back there. Just write themselves.
It doesn't stop. What about the Swannies? I mean, we've had our eye somewhat on Matt Roberts. It's kind of hard because Callum Mills has been in everyone's calculation. Mm-hmm. Can you also have Roberts when they're going to miss the same bye?
Now, I said on the record that I'm not as high on Matt Roberts as other people are. Nothing changed my mind in this one. But I also think if you were high on him, I don't think you're dissuaded from this one. I will say he's still not the number one kicking guy. That's the Lizard. He's still their number one kicking player.
The Lizard's so bouncy, isn't he?
Yeah. Which is not normally a thing you say about lizards, but...
have you seen those lizards on, like, the David Attenborough where the legs are...
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I've seen that one where it's like lizard versus 100 snakes or whatever.
It's got to be exactly where their nickname comes from. Because he
runs like him.
He fangs it out there.
He's moving his whole torso.
Elite.
But he's still the number one kicking guy. He also didn't have Jake Lloyd. Now, I know Jake Lloyd is not the Jake Lloyd of old, but he still will factor into that ball movement a little bit. So, look, he was there. He was used off halfback, got a few handball receives and things like that. Like I said, I think if you're keen on him, you didn't see anything alarming. But I didn't see, as someone who was not as keen on him, anything that sort of made me go, I need to get this guy on my team. So, kind of just checking boxes, I think.
Okay, do you mind if we move on to the next game?
Let's do it. What do we got next? Remind me which one.
This is Port Adelaide, and this was one that we were just itching to watch for a couple of reasons.
Friday night, we were.
Mainly for that Adelaide midfield. And, I mean, maybe we're none the wiser, but at least we've got some information. So
the key missing piece here is Isaac Rankin didn't play, which I was a little bit upset about because, he didn't play because he played the Indigenous All-Star. But on the other side, Jason Hall-Francis played. And so, come on, Isaac, get out there.
Yeah, and he played well, Horn Francis, too.
He
I
did.
mean, it's in a game that didn't matter, he came out and looked dominant to start. I think this is going to be just one of the narratives of mine throughout the preseason is whether I go with this guy or go against him.
So, what would it take for you to start? Like, so do you think he's almost their number one midfielder? Like Butters and Rosie kind of looked a bit more like they were just ticking the legs over.
He's their number one. He's their number one explosive impact midfielder.
Is he the number one CBA attendee?
No, I think Zach Butters is still that. That's my feeling.
I agree.
But we've said many times that we just don't know what that Horn Francis CBA correlation between CBAs and scoring is like. He has patches in games where he absolutely sets the world on fire and then others where he goes missing, which is, I think, pretty typical for an impact player. But at the end of the day, it's the final score that counts. So if he can put enough quarters together, he's a guy that you're going to want to have. So
last year, Ollie Wines actually outscored him by 2 points per game. I think that's definitely not going to happen this year.
No, I would imagine not.
So I think he's at least a few points unders, maybe up to 100 averaging player. So I think there is meat on the bone.
Yeah,
it's more the other options below him that I think is the question. I think if this was the defensive line, I'd be happy to start him.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. If I wasn't as confident with some of the other options below that are at a cheaper price. So yeah, he is. I was staunchly against him at the start of the preseason. I'm now accepting that he could be a good pick.
Yeah, he's certainly making us think twice. Connor Rosie and Zach Butters did what we expected. It's probably
I think
not worth saying much
these are the type of players where you just go, they played, they're in the role that we expect them to be in the role.
Yep.
That's all I'm after. I mean, don't need a big score. In fact, sometimes you want your premiums to have a mediocre score because then you go, everyone just jumps off and you've got them a bit cheaper. Remember Butters last year, he rolled his ankle in the first minute or so of the game.
That definitely put a few people off.
He still came out and played well. So, yeah.
Do you want to talk about the sort of Port Adelaide backline as a whole here?
Yeah, well, I do, but I also want to highlight one player who we got a little hot tip because we did watch this one a little bit after the time went on again. The man who may be having one of the better preseasons out of the three of us, your old man. He's the number one scout over here at the Ball Boys. But
he's onto it.
He pointed out,
he loves the title too, I reckon.
Yeah, he pointed out Kane Farrell, who seemed to be... Oh, sorry, not Kane Farrell.
Oh,
am I talking about? Miles Bergman is the guy I'm talking about.
The Iceberg.
The Iceberg.
How could you forget?
Yeah, sorry. I was getting me Port Adelaide.
You were miles off.
Nice. But he looks like he was the guy that benefited the most with Houston gone.
He looked very much the guy, didn't he? He certainly... No, I was trying to work on something on the fly there. Nothing happened. No, he looked really good. And it's one game, so sometimes you have these kind of standout games where it all kind of comes together. And there was a lot of floating across, marking in front of packs, these kind of things that they're not going to stick every single week. Yeah. But he looked good, and there was high praise from the coach as well. We were of the opinion that maybe those Port Adelaide backmen would do it by committee: Farrell, Evans, Bergman, Sin. And it's one game, so there's still a chance that next game it's one of those other guys that pops. But if what we saw on the weekend was something to go by, Bergman seemed to be the thirstiest of those guys. Yeah, after a one-game sample, it looks like he's going to improve the most. His price at 75. Awkward price. Probably needs to go at least 90 plus to be a good pick. I don't know if he's going to get that high, but I could see him in the 80s. But again, if another performance like that, it could do a lot to actually make him more of a serious option for me. And again, the defense, sometimes it doesn't take as much in that kind of a line this year. But the other options in Kane, Farrell, Logan Evans, Burton also went off with a bit of an injury, but then came back on. They didn't sort of put their hand up to me. So I think a few of those other guys, I'm looking elsewhere. The last one on Port Adelaide we'll talk about is Joe Berry. We talked about, who was the Essendon player? Kako. He had a similar role to him, but I feel like he did get up the ground a bit more. So if I'm picking between two of those small forwards who look like have really good job security, I'm probably picking Berry over Kako. It's hard to tell with some of these games because I've seen some stats out there, people taking the stats from home, and I don't think he scored very well. But to my eyes, I saw him on the bench a lot,
And in these kind of games, I'm pretty sure they roll with like 26 or more players. So
we're talking first 3 periods here too.
Yeah, and I think he would have been the victim of low time on ground, which I think in a normal game when you've got less players on the bench, he'll get a higher time on ground than what he did in this game. So
yep, I'd have to agree. You're pretty invested in the Adelaide Crows midfield this preseason, particularly because of the one man that wasn't playing. But talk to us about how do you think that Rankin absence impacted guys like Peatling, Dawson, and even Sid Draper?
Well, the talk is that Rankin's going to be in there. I mean, they're really hyping him up from what I've seen.
They rank him highly.
Yeah, they do. Nice. So if we are to believe that, I think we're going to have a pretty busy midfield in Adelaide. I know a lot of people were counting out Matt Crouch. I think he's definitely in there. I've sort of been of that opinion the whole time, and he was like, he's a pure midfielder. He goes to the midfield. When he's not playing midfield, he's on the bench. So to my eyes, it was him and Dawson leading the CBAs. Now, I didn't see Dawson playing much. He played maybe a few possessions forward, maybe 1 or 2 on the wings. But to me, he looks like the Dawson that we could pencil in as like a 70-plus CBA guy. But whether or not Rankin just puts a dent in that a little bit is something to be seen. I also had heard that Saligo was playing more on the wing, but I didn't see any of that in this game. He was midfield and forward, and he had a great game.
Salih stayed in the midfield.
Yeah.
He didn't Salih go out
losing
to the wing.
a little bit.
No, I think that was a good one.
Okay.
I'm gonna award that one.
It was an original. It was an original. Yeah. So
sometimes you got to go out of the box.
Yeah, you do. So he and Peatling were kind of like the 3rd and 4th guy, and Rankin could come in and leapfrog those two. I can see a world where that happens. So
the Peatling did spend a little bit more time forward than we first anticipated, and with Rankin to come back in there, that probably doesn't help. But the thing about Peatling is that on that little stretch that he went on at the end of last year when a few people got on him, he didn't really have obnoxiously high CBA numbers. I think he averaged sort of like mid-80s from about just over 50% time on ground, which priced at 62 would be fantastic. We'd be happy with that. So I don't think it was enough to scare us off, Peatling.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see in this team is similar to Port Adelaide. I think you're going to see like a 5-man rotation in that centre bounce. So in Port, they've got JHF, Rosie, Butters, Wines, and Drew. You're going to see a similar number in Adelaide with Peatling, Dawson,
Crouch,
Saligo, and Rankin. Did I say Rankin twice? Anyway, so whether that just takes a ceiling off all of those guys, I think that you might be looking at that. So maybe instead of Peatling being that 95 guy, maybe he's more like 85 to 90. Instead of Dawson being that 116, maybe he's 110. Like, it just kind of might just take the ceiling off a few of those players. But again, we'll wait and see. Rory Laird, the worst case secret in AFL Fantasy. He was off halfback. Looked thirsty at times.
There was a patch in the third quarter.
There was some patches.
Where I reckon he scored about 30 points in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's not...
No kick-ins.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw him take a single kick-in, which is not something you... Like, we saw that stat with Lockie Whitfield.
It's a good stat.
Would have averaged 92 without the kick-ins. How much can Rory Laird average if he's not getting many kick-ins on that team? And it has me sort of... I don't think you can start with him, but he might become an option once he gets DPP.
Last guy we'll talk about specifically is Sid Draper. I saw a couple of things out and about his score and when people calculated it. But
it probably wasn't as impressive as people were hoping, but...
This to me was one of those ones where the eye test I felt like was doing wonders for me. You looked at this guy and thought, this guy's AFL ready. We know
he did look that way.
We know that perhaps... with the aforementioned stacked midfield, that he's not going to see a heap of time in there.
I don't think so.
But with a guy that is able to find the ball and can push up to the contest from high half forward, I think this is a rookie that we're probably going to want to have in our teams.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's the biggest thing we can see from these rooks is you sort of just get that eye test. And if they're good enough, and like the team will find a spot for them. And I think Sid Draper is of that level. I think pushing up from a high half forward role, I think he and Neil Bullen can kind of do a similar kind of things, maybe take turns at that sort of a role. I think, especially with some of the other mids maybe falling around, I think the quality of what we saw is enough for me to go, yep, I'm happy with what I saw there. Hopefully the time on ground is going to increase when they trim those benches down and, get a bit more of a proper dress rehearsal. So, yeah.
Mate, you did the heavy lifting on Saturday. I was out and about, so I couldn't watch the D's Kangas, and then after that, the Carlton St Kilda game.
Yes.
But you had your eyes on, and there were some things that you liked the look of.
Yes. Well, so first of all, Harry Sheasel, Tristan Sherry, tick. They both did what we expected. Sheasel maybe a little bit more forward time than I was maybe hoping for.
Okay.
But, a player like Will Phillips was in there a lot. I'm not sure how much we'll actually see that come the real stuff, so potential a little bit there. Tristan Sherry, unfortunately, didn't go up against Max Gawn. Tom Campbell was the one rucking, old real estate legend himself. So Sherry towed him up, did what we expected, so I don't think there's too much to learn about him.
Sherry turns +1s into +3s and +4s so frequently. When
there wasn't too much of that because of how uncontested the game was being a practice match, but you saw he was bullying Tom Campbell. Let's be real. Caleb Daniel, lock him in, lock.
Oh yeah,
he took most of the kick-ins, kicked a goal from like 55 meters. Was getting very thirsty back there. Absolutely locked. Don't need to talk about him more. Stocks down, however. Colby McKercher looked great from a football perspective, but he was very much high half forward, little bit of wing, little bit of CBAs. Where he was not in the back line at all. He ran back there from a different position, but his improvement, I think, is going to come more from quality over quantity. So I think, for me, it's lined up with a few things we've heard. I'm pretty much putting a line through Colby now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. A couple of guys that I wanted you to have eyes on. Luke Parker's a really interesting one because there's not, in my opinion anyway, been a huge amount of hype about Luke Parker. But typically when you see a guy go to a new club, especially a guy of his stature going to what we would say is a struggling club, there's often a bit of hype, but the age factor is there. They've also got some developing young mids. Do you think Luke Parker's just there to act as a bit of a mentor, or do you think he's there to get pilled?
I think more the first. I would have hoped to see him more in the middle, considering that Jai Simpkin wasn't there as well. I'd say he was probably 50-50 mid-forward when he was on the field. So, and with Simpkin to come back into it, and again, I'm not sure if Phillips is going to be there. He played a lot of centre bounce time. I think he's behind LDU, obviously. He's behind Sheasel. I think he's behind Tom Powell, who we'll talk about in a second. And he's going to be fighting with Simpkin. So I think, probably not enough for me to see him, to start him in Classic, given that he's priced on the discount from 2 years ago, not last year. So, yeah.
Tom Powell, after reading your Patreon article here as well, this is one I'm fighting against myself with because I don't really, for some reason, this doesn't sit well with me, this pick. I don't know what it is, but there's certainly been some hype since the game.
Yeah, there's been so much talk about him in the preseason. A lot of people saying he's been the best preseason player for the Roos so far, and I could see why. Like he looked fitter than I've seen him play before. Like he was getting a lot more outside ball to my eyes. And again, it's hard. It's one practice match. There's a lot of outside ball to be had in those practice matches, but he looked to be a top 3 CBA attendee alongside LDU and Sheasel. And we did see him in that role a little bit to start last year. But then he obviously moved out of that role. So based on him moving out of that role, I think there's a bit of upside just on that alone. But I think you could take it to another level. I do think, however, you're banking on natural progression, which is not usually something I love to do, especially in the midfield. So I think he's more of a draft guy. But if he priced at 79, if he came out and averaged 99, I wouldn't be shocked.
You wouldn't be shocked. The part that I think I was referencing before makes me a little uneasy on the pick is, like you said, he played that role in patches last year, and there was obviously something at North Melbourne that they either didn't like with what he was doing or liked better with what someone else was doing.
Yeah.
What's to say that?
I think it was when it really coincided when Sheasel went into the midfield. He basically came out. So I'm just looking at the games where he was playing basically more than 50% CBAs. He averaged 90 essentially,
which in my mind is not enough, priced at 80.
So he's 10 points unders. So I think that could be his floor. maybe low 90s, mid 90s would be what I'd expect from him. But again, I think there's a lot of good mid-price picks in the midfield. I think he's just down the list a bit for me, but I would bump him up my draft to at least the sort of the 90 range, I'd say.
Keep in mind, Simpkin not playing in this one as well.
Yeah.
Finn O'Sullivan, stocks down.
He was there. I don't think he had a lot of it. And kind of the theme of a few of our mid-rookies, again, we'll talk rookies next podcast, but I don't think I'm going to be labeling him as a must-have rookie for our starting squads. I think he is going to... I think they've said this as well. He's going to be more quality over quantity, playing on the wing. We've gotten so used to these North Melbourne rookies just coming out and going bang. I don't think we're going to see that with O'Sullivan. I think he's going to bide his time a little bit.
Keep an eye out. But
we'll keep an eye on him. Obviously, you can win me over with another game, but not at this stage. Melbourne, one guy, and the stat collectors out there. Cat's out of the bag.
He went to work.
He went well. And he looked good. Trent Rivers.
What did the stat collectors say, Mitch? I haven't seen that
I've
yet.
seen, again, there's a bit of variance out there, which understandably so. I could not sit and do stats for a game. I think I would tear my hair out. But I've seen a lot of them in the realm of 120 in this game. Now, the huge asterisk is no Petrarca, no Viney, who are two walk-up mids. But I cannot see a world where he's not at least a top 4 mid and a heavy top 4 mid. Like, I think he needs time in there. He looks the best player on the field, and was the guy that they were using the most. Like, he was in charge of getting those +6s, kicking the ball, finding targets, tackled pretty decently as well. It was impressive.
Yeah, I think he gives their midfield another dimension. Obviously, Petrarca's pretty explosive and line-breaking too, but Oliver and Viney...
Well, in and unders.
In and under, and they're similar players. So I think Trent Rivers gives them something different, which is nice. So I think fourth mid could be enough to get it done, especially from a guy that we've seen score in a good role before too. And so priced at 82, he could be that guy to take another step. Clary, just give him the tick. He played really well.
He looks like he was moving well, looked fit. He had that urgency again. Was the real thing I was looking for, and just was like going in like reckless tackles and second efforts, all these kind of things. So yeah, I liked what I saw from Clary. A couple of the rookies. Harvey Langford to me impressed me. He's a big boy. That was like the first thing I said. I thought, I was like, man, this is a big kid.
Not a big boy.
No, not yet. Okay. Maybe in a few years, but
just woo up there, Harvey.
Got to earn your stripes, mate.
But not a big boy just
But
yet.
he's a big kid. He's a big kid. I think that, again, similar to like I said, Draper looked at the level, didn't look out of his depth. I have heard them say like he's a bit of a mini Clayton Oliver, and I can see the comparisons. Like,
it's high praise.
Just
is it 2024 Clayton Oliver, or is it what we're hoping for this year?
Maybe he will be the 2024 Clayton Oliver, and that would be fine at 32 price tag figure.
I hope he's an on-field Clayton Oliver rather than off-field Clayton Oliver.
Yeah, hopefully. But he was good. I think I'd be surprised if he's not there round 1. Xavier Lindsay, he's a great kick. There was a couple of outside players that were missing from this one, notably Kristen Salem and Ed Langdon. I wonder how close to the edge of the team is he with those guys coming in, would be my concern. But his role was nice, like wing, halfback, outside play. Like I said, had a great kick on him. Like, I'd almost prefer his role to Langford's, but I feel like he's more on the edge of the side. So I think he would need to keep putting out some decent performances to lock that in.
Okay, we'll keep watching those rookies, but I want to talk about the last game. Saints, I mean, this could even be the most relevant of the lot.
I think it was.
And they saved it till last. So Saints Blues, just quickly, some of the key players missing. No Sinclair, no Marshall, no Mason Wood, no Hunter Clark, no Sam Walsh for the Blues, which I know you'll talk about in a second, and then Charlie Curnow and Jack Silvani, some flow-on effects there.
Yeah, some huge flow-on effects, especially with that Charlie Curnow one. Where should we start first? Should we start with the Saints?
We should, mate. Let's start with the number one forward pick, I would say, this year that everyone wants to lock into their teams.
Well, outside of Bailey Smith. But
correct.
Yeah, I mean, our F1 for a lot of us, Jack McRae, lock him in. Absolutely lock him in. Top 2 mid, him and Steele, they're the number 1 and 2 guys.
He's going to be just loving that after what he's done the
He'll
last
love
couple
it.
of years.
Yeah, he'll have a new lease on life, so don't need to overthink that. The Wang, he
Oh.
looked good.
Talk dirty to me. Tell me about the Wang.
What about Nazaya?
Was it a big Wang?
Mate, he was everywhere.
Tell me I got a big Wang.
Yeah. I will not be saying those words. But Nazaya, he was the guy back there. There was no Sinclair, like you said. So, you know, what did we learn? He's a good player. Yes, we knew that before. He, they just seemed like there was a little bit more commanding. Give me the ball.
That's what I want to see. I'm gonna have to watch the game tape back because that's what I like to see from the Wang.
And just
timid
straight
Wang.
in there after the centre bounce, like right up to the play. Just it really, really good. He was definitely their preferred user. So if you were on him before, I think you saw what you wanted to see. One of the biggest takeaways I think from this game, Hugo Garcia,
Mr. Mexico.
someone.
I'm assuming that was just a straight racial assumption. Don't cancel us. Sorry, Hugo.
But he had a Hugo game.
Yeah.
And it wasn't on my radar before this, but he definitely needs to be on our radar because he was, I would say, the third guy in the midfield when it came to CBAs behind Steele and McRae. But he's like priced at 41, forward eligible in our team. And he's been a guy that's played patches, I think, last year, known for his tackling. But he was tackling, but he was getting the ball as well. And the Saints played really well in this one. I think they beat the Blues. Obviously, the score doesn't matter in a game like this, but they looked good. And the rotation seemed to work. It was a tight rotation. There wasn't too many players that went through there, but Hugo was definitely top 3, in my opinion.
I feel obligated now to find out a little bit about Hugo's heritage after just racially profiling Hugo. So somebody can let me know.
Well, he plays for the Saints. That's all we need to know.
He's a Saint.
He is a Saint. And he's priced at 41.
He's going to play for the Oxons this year just out of sheer guilt. Sorry, Hugo, you're in.
But
not even in the showers, you're just in.
Yeah, well, I mean, he needs to be at least in your showers. Because he could be a very good option at F5, F6, F4. There's a few different structure things you could work on there. But, yeah, I mean, if he puts this kind of performance up again, I'd nearly say lock him in because you don't often see these top 3 mids as an option as cheap as he is in your forward line. So he's definitely stocks up and one to watch. Harry Boyd, Big Boydie, he's a bit of a brute in there. Threw his weight around a little bit. The tip I've got, I know Calvin's on this over the Traders. I think we'll see him round 1. I think he'll be rucking with. You're on family trees over here. The guilt's really gotten to you.
Yeah, I'm trying. This is what I typed into Google. Name heritage finder. Spanish, maybe.
Look,
Spanish.
it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, mate. So this is what you're doing. You're asking for forgiveness.
Just cancel us.
But
put me out of my misery.
Harry Boyd, I think he's there round 1. I think he's going to ruck with Marshall if he's there.
Yeah, R3.
Because I think if he's playing, he has to ruck. So I think this is someone, he'd be my first choice, R3, if he's playing. And I think it's going to have an impact on Rowan Marshall because there's no way you watch that game and if he is in your side, that he's not doing some of the rucking. He has to be at least in there 40% of the time. So
a couple of rookies as well. Max Hall and then Hugh Boxshell, big box.
Yeah, the big box.
What was the big box getting up to on Saturday?
The big box playing alongside the big Wang is something you don't see every day. But he was. I'd never heard of the guy.
Depends where you look.
Yeah, depends. I'd never heard of the guy until this game, so he definitely went on my radar. 230K midfielder. He was the 4th highest CBA guy in this one. So it was him and Garcia. And the other thing to note is that it wasn't like, okay, Sinclair you think is going to be in there a bit. Like Hunter Clark, it's probably the other guy.
I think
Paddy
Sinclair makes a
Dow.
big difference.
Like, to me, he definitely put his hand up to be a round 1 bolter. How much is he going to get what he got on the weekend in the real stuff? We'll see. I mean, he's on a bit of a race against the clock to be ready for round 1 with his hamstring injury. there's a little bit of a concern in the back of my mind that we might see Boxall like start 1 or 2 games and then find his way out of the side pretty quickly. That's like what my gut's telling me. But definitely put him on your radar. Put the little star on him in AFL Fantasy. Max Hall, similar kind of thing. I don't think he had as much CBA time, was more off half forward, but similar kind of play style. Like, he was in there. So, like, a few of these guys, it's hard to really single out one. So definitely worth another watch again in the next game to see if one can separate themselves or provide a bit more consistency. But yeah, a couple of cheap options on our bench from these Saints players that we definitely need to keep in mind.
Mate, over at the Blues, Tom De Koning would have had you feeling the Blues.
Yes.
What was going on?
I've been a big Tom De Koning man, but look, he played the first centre bounce. He was the number 1 ruck that first CBA.
And you were loving it.
And I was like, okay, cool, here we go. And then literally after 90 seconds, 2 minutes, he ran forward and big pit net. He's the new Dom to me.
Did you say something? Did you moz it?
Nah.
Did you give it a little, Did you give it a little Yahoo, little fist bump?
I wasn't watching this one when it was live as well, by the way.
So you could have possibly mozzed it in real time.
No, nothing like that. So, but pit net, after 1 CBA, after 2 minutes, was in there, taking the ruck contest. He went forward. I think in the first half, they were probably about 50-50. And it just, like, if you were the coach for Carlton, right, and you had this plan, okay, Tom De Koning's going to be our number 1 guy.
I got pipes like Fossey.
Yeah, fair enough. Audience can decide that. But would you not go out there and in a game where it doesn't matter the result and at least experiment in the first half with TDK being the number 1 guy, if that's what you're going to do for the majority of the season?
Maybe they were eliminating the big pit
net.
Maybe they know what they're going to do.
He didn't look too bad, to be honest.
Ooh.
I think De Koning was clearly the better option. But Pitnet, he had some good taps, and like he's probably a better tap ruckman. How much value do you place on that? Maybe it's me being a newbie to AFL by a sense, saying that I don't rate that ability too highly compared to what De Koning was doing in terms of contested marking and things like that. It's definitely put a pause in my step when it comes to De Koning. I think it could be a flow on with Charlie Curnow not being there, and they just want to make sure they have those 3 tools in there with Mackay, De Koning, Pitnet, and if Curnow comes back in, Pitnet's out. Yeah, it'll be very interesting. If Curnow is named round 1 and De Koning is named as the solo ruck, it just places that little bit of a doubt in the back of my mind that any injury to any one of those 3 players and he's back out. The best case scenario is Kernow's not there round 1 and they still named De Koning solo ruck. Then I feel more confidence. But other scenarios outside of that, it makes me hesitate. So I think stock's down a little bit for De Koning.
You put the little green tick here next to Adam Chera.
Yeah, well, I think he did enough. There was one patch as well where I think you said there was a patch that Rory Laird picked it up. He basically took a mark in defensive 50, kicked it to someone, ran into the centre of the field, took another mark, kicked it to someone, ran into the forward 50, took a mark, and then kicked a goal. So essentially had a plus 24 in a minute's space. So
I mean, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good. So I think it was the second or third quarter where he actually dominated. But to me, he looked like Cripps was the number 1 guy. He was sort of done after halftime. Hewitt, Doherty, and Chera were the other ones in there. I think Doherty might be a bit more of that wing. Sam Walsh obviously didn't play. But to me, Chera has the potential to be at least top 4, maybe top 3 in their CBA rotation. And I think that's all he needs, really, to be that 90 to 95 sort of guy.
Ollie Hollands is currently at the Oxlongs, M5. Tell me I'm right.
You're right. I'm going to stop myself short of saying he's a lock. But if he does what he did in the first half of this game again, I don't know how you don't pick him.
Is he at Mitchmond currently?
He's at Mitchmond.
Okay.
He definitely cooled off in the second half, but the whole game kind of cooled off in the second half.
Yeah.
In the first half, he was everywhere. Full license to roam. Took kick-ins.
Yeah.
Just looked fit. Like, this guy was running hard, and apparently it was a 33 degree day. Price 62. There's a lot that I like here, so I think big stock's up on him. some people might look at the score because I think some of the stats and the scores came out for the whole game that he wasn't actually that impressive. But he had like 50 at halftime. I would have had to have at least guessed. Okay. And then probably really slowed down after that because I think he just didn't need to exert himself too much more. But yeah, that first half was enough for me to say, yep, like what I saw.
We typically wouldn't want to finish on a bit of a sad note, but Jagger Smith has just come out.
Horrible news.
Yeah, that he's done his ACL. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, so he had an awkward fall with Jack McRae. It wasn't the typical ACL. So I thought maybe syndesmosis or something like that. He limped off. It didn't look good at the time. But yeah, ACL, done for the year. Terrible news. So all the best to him.
It's pretty rough.
The optimist in me sort of says, okay, well, maybe that shores up a bit of Chera. Like there's less of that threat from a Smith. But obviously that's one cash cow that we've got to now search for a replacement because he was someone that was pretty locked into our starting squad. So unfortunately he's not going to be there and we'll lock him in next year.
Well, indeed. I think that just about wraps us up.
Yeah, mate.
Another good one, mates.
Absolutely. So
look at that.
We've got one more of these practice match weekends to go. The community series where we're going to have stats. The most underrated thing I think we're going to get, time on ground stats. So we can get some points per minute. I think that is criminally underrated.
The other thing you mentioned a couple of days ago is actually watching those games and watching when certain players on the bench and
so you'll get
when that coincides with their teammates being on the field.
You'll get that ability to see when they're on the bench, if they're still on the field, but maybe they're not in the midfield. So it gives you an idea if they have a secondary position, all those kind of juicy details.
Like
so,
and if you get over to the Patreon, you're going to get the write-ups hot off the press.
Hot off the press. We'll try to get them to you that day. You know, we'll watch them as quickly as we can. Try to keep the better halves at least a little bit happy, but we'll get them out. And we will be doing a team reveal after the community series games, but it will be exclusively to Patreon members. So
it's a very revealing team reveal.
It's a very revealing team reveal right on the cusp of the season. So both Luke and I are going to be talking through our final team reveal of the season before opening round, after the community series game. So if you want to see what our teams are looking like lining up before opening rounds, check them out on Patreon, patreon.com/Ball Boys. And we'll see you guys in the next possible. We're going to be talking about the must-have rookies. And if there is a bit of a rookie crisis, dare I say, we'll see you then. Bye.